Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Mel K Show. I have today my favorite journalist out there that's actually covering the truth better than anyone else, at least keeping us up to date on what is really going on. I welcome back Jack Cashill, and he's here to talk about everything that we've been talking about the Obamas, but also his book, The Promised Land, came out. Promised Land, Deplorables Need Not Apply. So let's get into it. How you doing, Jack?
I am doing well. Thanks for having me, Mel.
Oh my God, I had to have you on. When I saw all this stuff about the big Obama party on a small, tiny island on the water with 700 people, I see they toned it down, but I'm not sure if that's true. I said, I got to get Cashill on here and hear what he has to say about this.
Well, they got a break with COVID.
Right.
Because it gave him an excuse to tone down the party.
Right.
Because, I mean, first of all, if Hank Johnson, remember the Congressman Hank Johnson?
Yeah.
From Georgia?
Yeah, where his Guam's going to fall off the planet, right?
He literally said, in fact, I was just reading the exchange because I quoted the other day. This guy's a sitting congressman from Georgia. He was talking about the American troop presence, Marine presence in Guam. And he says to the general, he says, aren't you worried that the island will tip over and capsize because of all these people? And the general's response was great. He goes, we're not anticipating that. And so I guess he wasn't invited because he was afraid Martha's Vineyard would tip over.
Right, probably. It could.
Now, in the world of optics, it's a stupid word, but it's a useful word, I guess.
Yeah.
In Barack Obama's book, Promised Land, other than race, the thing that consumes him most is his anxiety about climate change. He talks about small islands being swallowed up by rising seas, right?
Right.
And then he goes out and buys a $12 million beachfront home in a tiny island called Martha's Vineyard off the coast of Massachusetts. By the way, his neighbor down the street is climate czar John Kerry, also with a $12 million beachfront home.
Of course.
But then again, Al Gore has a $9 million beachfront home in California. So,
of course, yeah.
They're not worried.
No. Well, Martha's Vineyard also, they were going to have 200 help.
Yeah.
And then all the guests, and then a big band. They were going to have Pearl Jam and John Legend. But this all looks like the cabal to me. This same crew hung out on Epstein Island. So, I don't know what's going on at their event, but
they apparently like islands.
Right. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I'm sure Barack Obama would like for some of those islands to be swallowed up. But but above that, it's just what is going on that they would even do this in the middle of what they're considering the Delta variant and all this. It's so nonsensical. I think people were looking at this thinking, what is this saying to we?
When I watched it, when I looked at it, and like I say, I have a new book out, I should say, by the way, Barack Obama's Promised Land.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Obama better than Obama knows Obama.
I know you do. And everyone should read that book because it's also really about the climate of race and what's going on now even more.
And it's also a kind of a fun summer read. So
yeah.
And I was thinking, whose idea could this possibly have been? I think it had to be Michelle's. Michelle's middle name should be Antoinette, as in let them eat cake. And there's a story, and she's such a manipulator, and she may be politically ambitious.
Right.
And I think that is part of it. And but it was such a bad idea.
Right.
Because not only does it shout out, we don't care about climate change, because all their friends, John Legend isn't flying commercial.
No, none of them are.
Commercial. Steven Spielberg isn't flying commercial.
No.
Oprah is not flying commercial. But it also shouts income inequality. Right. You're this struggling community organizer and this humble bride living in a $12 million beachfront mansion. So the whole optics were bad. 700 people plus the whole COVID thing, was actually for them a lifesaver because it gave them an opportunity to get out.
Right.
I could have written 6 more columns about this this event had they not canceled.
I know. I think it was probably part because of your column.
I hope so.
I think so. I did immediately. I thought, oh, really? But here's the thing, I don't even buy that they're toning it down or whatever. It still makes no sense. And I don't know, did you see that Valerie Jarrett, then right after they announced the event, puts out a thing, can you give $6 or $60 to the Obama Presidential Library, which already has $740 million already in their budget at least.
Right.
How tone deaf? What are they doing?
I mean, I think it'd be $740 million spent on misinformation.
Right.
That's the problem with it.
Yeah, right in the middle of Chicago, where the only place they have green space.
They could save the $740 million and spend $23 and learn more about Barack Obama than they will go into that stupid library.
Yeah, I know.
No, and it's really kind of amazing. And the hubris of these people, hubris.
Yeah, hubris.
And, because up until the time Obama emerged on the national stage in 2004,
right,
he and his wife were perpetually in debt. I mean, they were reneging on, they hadn't even paid their student loans. They had to renege on the original contract Obama got to write a book that he was unable to fulfill. And Simon & Schuster came and got their money back, or tried to.
Right.
And then his star was born, oddly, through his literary genius, which was totally fraudulent. It's becoming more and more obvious.
Yeah.
And now they're still grifting on America. It's not only not paying their student loans now they're just classic grifters. I mean, it's a great scam. I kind of envy them their scam. I mean, it worked pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, also there's this other situation where I haven't seen Obama or Michelle. Usually they're out there pushing everything. I haven't seen them pushing the vaccine. And what people aren't talking about is that largely it's the Black community that isn't taking the vaccine. The entire time that the whole thing was going on, Farrakhan's out there not being censored, not being flagged, saying that they should not take the vaccine and all of that. Now they want to do the vaccine passports. Again, it's going to hurt the Black community the most.
Sure. Because you have to, apparently in New York, you have to show your passport on a cell phone. Is that right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Are you in New York?
Yes,
now?
Of course. Now I can go nowhere. But,
right.
But they said that only 9% of the Black community in New York has even gotten it. So who's going to be, as if it's not bad enough, now anyone who doesn't have a vaccine in New York City can't go into restaurants, gyms, or beauty salons, same thing as before, which makes no sense.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, again, it's like one after another. I feel like defund the police, critical race theory. Now this is all another war on the Black community without saying so.
Yeah, let alone keeping their kids home at school for a year.
Right.
And forcing them into bad education and shutting down alternative education and vouchers and any kind of entity that threatens the public school hegemony.
Right.
The teachers union hegemony. No, it's crazy.
Union, don't even.
Although I will say, just to be fair, I spoke at a teachers at a Tea Party event in Jamestown, New York last week. And Jamestown's in Western New York. It's kind of a rural area.
Right.
And I will say, I got to admit, I was nagged into getting vaccines, and I have some family issues that sort of justify that. I don't want to go into them.
Right.
But in this group, they would have received me better if I told them I was a recovering pedophile than if I told them I had gotten 2 vaccine shots. They were pretty hardcore. I got to give them credit.
I mean, there's two camps out there. I think the real thing is more the forcing it than the vaccine.
I think there's a very good argument. I would never have gotten one had it not been for people in my family who have sensitivities that are
right. I mean, everyone made their choice.
Right, make your own choice, and then you don't. Then you should. In fact, I'm willing to be I live in Kansas City. About 10 or so years ago, they had an anti-smoking ordinance come through, and they put it before the public. I became the face of the opposition to the anti-smoking ordinance, even though I've never smoked.
Right.
I figured I was in a good position to do that. It's a freedom issue. It's not a smoking issue.
Right.
And that's what it should be with vaccines.
Right. Yeah, especially since it still is experimental, and also, I mean, they've been treating the healthy. all this time. They held back ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. But even beyond that, if it's such a big deal, you would think Obama and Michelle would be the first ones out there promoting it. And I
Right.
haven't seen them step into this conversation at all.
Especially since, as you suggest, they would get a hearing in the Black community that,
Right.
that Mel K might not get, out of line.
Probably. Yeah. And, I want to stick on that because now it looks like, how much longer can they parade around Joe Biden? The whole world's laughing at us. It's one thing after another. Kamala is not going to fly. And maybe when I saw that and I thought of your book and you, and I thought, maybe this is like them putting the focus back on Michelle and Barack, because it is looking like there's a tremendous amount of fraud in the election. If so, and whatever, we don't know what's going to happen. But I think, like you spoke about last time, that the move that they might be making is to push Michelle to the front.
Hang on, I'm just going to take this phone off. I'll just let it ring. It's my non-cell phone.
I'm very low tech.
Can you endure that for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. No, I have a theory about this. I think with Joe is increasingly feeble and Kamala is obviously and apparently feckless.
Right.
One of them is going to go soon.
Right, I agree.
The 25th Amendment goes into place. If Joe goes first, Kamala becomes the president. But it's that vice presidential spot in either case. If Kamala goes first, that where the power will be.
Right.
And I just think we witnessed over the last 2 days the kneecapping of the most likely successor, Andrew Cuomo.
Yes,
I don't think that was accidental.
I don't either.
For 10 years, he was the wonder boy of the Democratic Party, especially last year, 2020.
Right.
No one complains about him. No one says boo about his toxic masculinity.
Right, exactly.
Just 6 months ago or 8 months ago, the Hollywood had announced a bunch of them and called themselves Cuomo-sexuals.
Right, I saw. And he got an Emmy.
And now they're Cuomophobes overnight.
Right. Yeah, I think the same, because I'm also looking at the crimes of Cuomo. The harassment is the least of them.
The least of them, right.
So it makes no sense, but that's an interesting point where he would have been popped in, the most likely one, especially with his performance that everyone lauded over COVID. And now it looks like he probably, because they're all ganging up on him to such an extreme, they're probably going to arrest him. And here's the great thing about Cuomo. I've said it for a year. If Cuomo goes down, he's taking people with him.
Yeah.
He's a bully and he's been around a long time. He was in the Clinton White House.
Right.
So I don't know if you saw yesterday, to defend himself, he put up all these pictures of Clinton and Joe Biden and all of them hugging and kissing people. And I'm thinking, he's threatening them.
And that's just the first scale on that step.
Right.
I did a little digging to see who was responsible. This, and on the left, their internal wars are more interesting than the wars between Democrats and Republicans.
Right.
Since there aren't any. So I tried to trace how this all came to be. But what I discovered was that in 2010, the incumbent governor of New York was David Patterson, who was black, and he was blind also, but he was black. And Obama was the one who nudged him out.
Oh, really?
Obama was the one who told him to step aside and let Andrew Cuomo run. Now, in a bad year for Democrats, Andrew Cuomo wins overwhelmingly, gets reelected twice. And then I said, okay, when did the whispers, when did the drums start beating about Andrew Cuomo as a harasser? And I traced it back to a tweet in December of 2020, after the election. After now we know we're stuck with Kamala and Joe. Right. And it comes from a woman named Lindsay Boylan,
right,
who worked for Cuomo for a bunch of years.
Right.
She'd been tweeting bad things about Cuomo for a while, but this time the New York Times picks it up.
And that's when you know.
Right. That's when someone turns the green light on and says, okay, it's time to go after Andrew. And then Ronan Farrow moves in for the kill.
Right. Right.
Now, and his interview with Boylan, what's fascinating about it is that she gratuitously inserts Hillary Clinton into the picture. So at first she says, Clinton has been her hero her whole life. She was all my hero, blah, blah, blah. And then she says, but I was dismayed by Hillary's response to these accusations coming forward.
Oh, really?
Hillary's response was actually pretty appropriate. It was pretty measured. She said what any politician would have said. And then I'm thinking about this. Okay, I get it. I watch enough crime shows to know is that, where you go wrong, when the husband goes wrong,
Right.
he kills his wife.
Right.
And then he cleans up the crime scene and the cops come in and they smell a little Clorox and they know that something's wrong.
Right.
I think that they had to launder the fact that Boylan was a lifetime Hillary Clinton supporter
Right.
by announcing now that she's dismayed, it was her word, by Hillary's lack of enthusiastic response. I think it was all set up. I think Hillary's behind it. I think Hillary's angling for that VP spot and she wants to run in 2024. They're telling her she has a 99% chance of beating Trump in 2024. She should be wary of those numbers since they told her that on election day in 2016.
Right.
But
yeah, but I mean, this is the craziest part, Jack. I can't understand it. They have so much evidence on crimes. So I feel like we don't have a DOJ, an FBI, all these agencies that aren't even constitutional anyway. But I mean, we just keep ignoring huge crimes that are against we the people. And still, nobody's ever talked about Uranium One. Nobody's ever talked about the truth about Libya and what went on there and all of that. And still Hillary just continues to pop back up. She probably is manipulating that, but the taking out of, now that you brought it up, the taking out of Cuomo also helps Michelle, because we know she's not done. So both of them, and I don't see what is going on with the justice system in America. Now Merrick Garland's threatening individual states that are sovereign. Where are we?
This is in my lifetime, unprecedented state of random justice.
Right.
And it's, I've been able to carve out a career just covering stories that major media refuse to cover.
Right.
And the problem is less a government problem, because governments will always go awry. That's the nature of the beast.
Right.
As a media problem. Big media have totally betrayed their profession, their mission. Right. Now they're a propaganda arm of the state, and they don't even bother to conceal it.
No.
So you have stories that are massive stories. I wrote a book on, for instance, on the death of Ron Brown, Clinton's Commerce Secretary.
Oh, wow.
On that plane crash was a New York Times reporter. They wrote it off, so 2 days after, just quickly, 2 days after the crash, the airport guy in Croatia who's responsible for navigation commits suicide with a bullet wound to the chest.
Of course.
Like, where I would shoot myself in the chest.
Right. But
the New York Times just accepts it. When I got into this story 5 years after the fact, and I sent away for the 22-volume U.S. Air Force report on the crash, I was the first person in the media to request it. They lost the guy on the plane. They didn't want to know. I mean, so it goes back probably at least 25 years when the corruption of the media, when it went from bias to corruption.
Right.
And since then, there is no story that is unfavorable to our side.
Right.
That they've reported accurately, or to their side for that matter. I mean, they cover up their crimes and they magnify ours.
Yeah, but it's just such an extreme where I feel like the media is so dangerous at this point. I mean, so now we have this Delta variant, but we learned last week that the PCR test that they were using, that the guy also committed suicide or died mysteriously, who created it and said it wasn't for Corona, and also said Fauci was a fraud. But now they're saying that there's a Delta variant, but they have no test. So how are they doing that?
They're just guessing, because
nobody's asking either.
I just talked to a friend who actually had COVID. It was odd because I've never had a conversation with a person who went through the whole thing. Right. And what he did is, he had all the classic symptoms: couldn't smell, taste. And when everyone said, I didn't have any taste. Well, everyone said, no, you didn't have any taste to begin with, so it wasn't much of a loss. But what he did take was Regeneron, and he said it was like a miracle thing.
I think that's what Trump took in the hospital.
What Trump took, right?
Yeah.
And it was like you could tell while it was being administered that you were getting better.
That's what remember Trump said. He said he felt like Superman while he was getting it. Like, it was amazing.
But what he did say is he said they don't test for Delta variant. They don't know that I have a Delta variant or don't have a Delta
Right.
variant.
Yet they go with it.
Yeah, or an interesting story, and this is the way the media refused to cover certain stories for covering various sensitivities.
Right.
What happened in Provincetown? Right? You know that story?
No, tell me, but tell the audience. I'm sure I know it, but let's talk about it.
There was an outbreak in Provincetown, Massachusetts, after a big weekend.
Oh, right, I read about it.
75% of the people who came down with some variant of COVID had been vaccinated.
Right.
But what they didn't want to tell is what the nature of that weekend was like and why it was such an anomaly. They just used it to spread fear. That's, to demand mask mandates and whatnot.
Right.
Well, it was Bear Weekend.
Right, LGBTQ event, right?
Right, and the Bears.
Yeah, they hid that.
Right, the Bears are the gay guys who kind of look like lesbians. They're big and fat and hairy, and they dress badly, and they get together. And apparently, Andrew Sullivan wrote about this, and he himself is gay. He was
right.
And he said it was a rainy weekend, so these thousands of people were compressed indoors into these tight spaces, where who knows what kind of sexual interactions were going on.
Right, of course.
And it is a super spreader event, unlike pool parties in the Ozarks.
Right.
This is what you call a classic. This is a petri dish of how many other diseases emanated from that event,
Of course.
But they don't want to talk about that because, it's just like, you can't talk about gays, can't talk about fat people. There's a lot of fat bears.
Right. Well, also they keep perpetuating that it's the unvaccinated, and that's not true.
No.
Even in Israel, where they were so crazy about vaccine and everyone getting vaccinated, that there's an outbreak there. They're saying it's the vaccinated people. It's the vaccinated people that are getting it. And, that leads to the question of then what is the vaccine for? And what is this? We've never seen a push like this internationally coordinated to get any kind of drug, let alone an experimental vaccine. And it's just our media. I feel like, they should be held accountable. I don't feel like anyone's going to be held accountable for anything right now, but the media, the most, have been incredibly dangerous and have caused so much mental and emotional with the fear and the lies and the twisting of everything that it's like they're conscienceless.
They are, and the people who watch CNN or watch or read the New York Times are, and now so many of them are literally neurotic in ways that they would not naturally have been, just watching all this misinformation on the radio.
Right. They're completely brainwashed, and I don't know what anyone thinks about the election fraud, but I've met with some of these people that are involved. Like I had Jovan Pulitzer on, I've met with Patrick Byrne. I'm telling you that they have so much evidence of the fraud, but the media still says there was no fraud. If they just said that they're looking at it, and then we have Merrick Garland, I believe we have political prisoners in DC.
So do I, yeah.
That are being held unconstitutionally. Their civil rights are being totally violated. But on top of that, now we have all this stuff with the election, and people are just like, well, let's move on. But if we move on, regardless of Trump or not, if we move on and we allow this to continue going, and then they pass their HR1 and everything, because I'm at a point: was anyone duly elected last election in any of the races? And again, the media just says it's not true. Don't believe what you're seeing.
Not only that, but they call it the big lie.
Right.
Without evidence, Trump said, no, it's a big question. Media should be asking this big question. They should not be branding people who raise questions liars, since they haven't looked at anything themselves.
Right.
And I've run into this all my writing career, because for instance, I wrote the definitive book on the crash of TWA Flight 800. And I'll just be denounced in the media as a conspiracy theorist. You know nothing about this circumstance. If you knew a little bit, then you could come in and call me a conspiracy theorist. But not knowing nothing, you can't enter an argument.
Yeah, also what they want to take Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and Lynn Wood's law licenses after very distinguished careers, because they're even questioning the election.
Right. How
then
could you not question this election?
it's unbelievable. And we should be questioning a lot of the elections because, if there was cheating on the top level, then there's, all the Soros rogue DAs and there's judges and sheriffs that don't belong there.
Yeah.
And it's like, either we do something. I mean, what can we do? Our country is going really fast towards, I feel like there's a monarchy in DC, and that's how they behave. I don't know what you think of, Blinken, who's been a Soros puppet for about 30 years and was running a shadow government at West Exec Consulting across the street from Trump White House the whole time. When he called in the UN to examine America and our systematic racism and all of that, and then I thought of Libya and Syria and Yugoslavia and Ukraine, where, oh God, so they start the strife on the ground, the color revolution strife, the BLM, Antifa. Now he's calling the UN in to assess our America's failings on a global level. Meanwhile, then we find out that Milley christens the first fully operational NATO base in Virginia. And I'm thinking, okay, so the UN is now coming in to decide, I don't know, what's wrong, what's fundamentally wrong with America. And meanwhile, the UN's military is now functional outside of DC. And I'm thinking, what is going on? It's like, I feel like they're like, we are in the French Revolution to some extent.
And then you see, refreshing. I'm an optimist.
I'm an optimist too, but that's because of God. Not
that's
because
right,
of the
exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Well, nearer thy God to thee, getting nearer and nearer. Maybe. And that's part of the reason why the right didn't react with such panic to COVID, because more conservatives, right, know that there are players on a big stage, and that they have a time on this earth, and then they move on,
right,
and then ideally to a better place. But if all your life is if your God is Dr. Fauci,
right,
and your Bible is the New York Times, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
No, I see promising countersigns. I see things like Florida. I see the states standing up.
Right.
And like DeSantis did yesterday, very impressive.
I know.
And DeSantis is setting a model for other governors, because in states like my own, I live in Missouri, we have Republican governor, Republican-controlled legislatures.
Right.
By the way, Missouri was a Democratic state 20 years ago, so it happens.
Right.
There are movements in both directions.
Right.
But there are the people in Missouri saying, "Why don't you act like Ron DeSantis now? Don't be. You don't have to be a wimp. Get up there and stand up and speak out."
Right.
So that's happening on the positive side, but on the negative side, and also I say this is going to sound counterintuitive, but on the positive side, the leadership in Washington is so conspicuously deranged that
I know
no young person is looking to Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Nancy Pelosi and saying, "I want to be just like them. Where do I sign up?"
Right.
See, Barack Obama was dangerous because he had a following. Hillary was somewhat dangerous because she had at least a bizarre feminist following.
Right.
Biden and Harris have no natural constituency. I mean, they could stage a rally in a COVID-free arena, give away,
right,
baseball bats or something, and still have 35 people show up.
Right. It's that bad. It's that bad. There's no leadership. But also, I think that they're like, I'm sure you saw this ridiculous bill, this multi-trillion-dollar bill. Nothing in there is helpful to the American people.
Right.
And who are didn't Thomas Jefferson say that at some point, if it got to this place, that we would have to do something? I don't know what, I know people are standing up. I'm going around too and talking to people and encouraging people to get involved locally. I'm having on General Flynn next week. I'm going to ask him the same thing. But at the same time, it's like, I want to know that there's a backstop here. It seems to me that we have literally an oligarchy, a monarchy that's tied with the tech giants, that literally that little DC is like the kingdom, and they're treating the country like serfs, or, it's just, it seems so bizarre, like it can't even be real, but it is.
No, I feel like I'm an extra in a science fiction movie. And no one told me how the movie comes out yet,
Right.
In fact, last night, just for the heck of it, I went back and watched the first episode of The Walking Dead.
Oh, yeah, we're getting there.
And, and it was made about 10 or so years ago. The first several seasons of Walking Dead were very good.
Right, I know.
I got stupid and woke and I lost
I know.
interest. But now it's on Netflix and it's set in Georgia and the CDC is at the center of the plot,
Right.
because this infectious disease has broken out, blah, blah, blah,
Scary,
So-
right?
Yeah, no, I'm saying this is like pretty topical now,
I know, like Westworld too. You're
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah.
But that's
So-
the other thing about Hollywood, and to circle back, I hate to say that now, to go back to the whole Obama and Martha's Vineyard, that's the craziest part about all of this is they kind of tell you what they're going to do. I mean, from what I'm seeing, and then you see all this Hollywood stuff, and now it's like kind of coming true. Even on the CDC's website, they had a thing about the zombie apocalypse, and I thought, is that a joke? Is that a joke? But now we're at a place where, yeah, it just seems the players are very clear of who's doing what in terms of controlling the country. But I'm still very confused who is at the helm here. I think that it's probably Klaus Schwab and the Great Reset folk that are really pulling the strings here. But it's very unclear. What's your thinking? How involved do you think this is in a global? Because you can't ignore that it's the same language, the same moves, the same behavior of multiple countries, mainly the G20 group or G7 group at this point, that are all walking in Rockefeller terms lockstep on the same plans all over the world. And what's scary is America is the only country that doesn't seem to be fighting back. If you're looking at France, Italy, Greece, Germany, the people are rising up. Here, I think people are too scared because of January 6th. But what do you see on that level?
We have, as Donald Trump showed, we have the potential to not just not follow, but to actually lead. And for instance, when he pulled out of the Paris Accord, it was like when Reagan, fired the air traffic controllers. He told
Oh,
them,
right. That was great.
I'm serious and I'm going to do what I need to do.
Right.
And that was such a bold move. I remember at the time, I thought, we'd maybe find a committee to assess it. Or I said, wow, that was pretty cool.
Right.
So it only takes one election to put us back in that position.
Right.
And we are facing a much too unified world of internationalists who are, anti-borders. And it's hard to say what they're for, though.
Right.
Who could be for infecting McAllen, Texas with thousands of COVID infected patients? Who could be for flooding Germany with millions of people who have spiked the crime rate there? Who could be against Hungary, where Tucker Carlson was last night?
Right. Not wanting to transgender. Right.
Yeah. But there are a lot of people who, and yet it's so hard to figure out what their motives are. It's hard to find a concerted logic in their behaviors.
Yeah.
Other than self-destruction and self-enrichment. I mean,
Right.
those are the two things.
Yeah, it's weird. I've been looking like Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum. A lot of the people because I don't think Russia is the aggressor here. I also don't think China is the aggressor, because if you look around, it's really NATO that seems to be making all the moves. They said we got out of Afghanistan, then you hear that we're bombing Afghanistan. Like nothing's making sense, and it's this it's this group and they're out there. They all say the same language, build back better, and all the terminology they all use. But the people are onto it. I just feel like the people are waking up a little slower in America, sadly. But I do feel like the people worldwide are looking like they're exposing themselves like never before. I remember Trump said that there was an invisible empire, or invisible enemy that had all the money and all the power, and we've never heard their names. I think a lot of people have now heard their names. But the end goal is very confusing. I still believe that the end goal is still the Rockefeller New World Order, one world government. But even with the Pope coming out last week and telling priests that they're no longer allowed to do traditional Latin mass, I was What is going on?
I tell you what, because I go to a traditional Latin mass,
Oh, wow. See, well, weren't
and
you like, what?
and here's this is it might be an interesting side thing, because it was such a gratuitous slap at the most successful movement within the Catholic Church.
It was amazing.
My church, I live in Kansas City, was we had to shut down for like 2 months in March and April. By mid-May, as soon as they gave us the slightest clearance,
Right.
they said, okay, mass is on.
Right.
This meant, and without any directions about distancing or anything, standing room only crowds, no masks.
Right.
We went to Coffee and Donuts. Just so last week I'd been out of town for a couple of weeks. So calling you back, I wonder how they're worried about the Delta variant. Standing room only crowds, no mask. The average age at church is about 10. The church produces priests and nuns like regularly.
Right.
There is we can't keep up with the demand.
Right.
And it's traditional, and it's also traditional Catholic churches are also politically conservative.
Right.
Uniformly across the board.
Well, that had a lot to do with the shutdown of the church.
I think so. So
anyway.
You would no sooner show up with a Joe Biden bumper sticker in our parking lot than you would have a bumper sticker for ISIS. It's
right.
And that is probably behind it. That is
God, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. My whole thing, and this whole time as I'm watching this unfold, all I think is this is a total push to get God out. When
Right.
I was in Branson and I spoke and I said, it's like the left, everything is about like glorifying the 7 deadly sins, where the right is everything about or the destruction of the of God and religion and family and everything that we've talked about. Take it, and I've always said that I believe the UN, because of the loosest trust and everything, there's no mention of God in anything the UN does.
No, it's just the opposite.
Right.
And so you have months like Pride Month, and you think, what's next? Envy Month, Sloth Month.
Right. That's what it seems like. It seems like that the
party. All the 7 deadly sins.
Right. I mean, it's that obvious to me that this is a war on God that started a long time ago.
Yeah.
And like you said, what's the end game? And that's what I think, like when you said you're positive, you're optimistic. I'm optimistic because I believe God is in control at the end of the day. Just like when people say people are going to drop dead from the vaccine, I say there's no way. That's just not in the cards. But I wish God would make a move.
Yeah. Well, he probably is. We're just not noticing it.
I know.
I'll tell you what, here's a God-inspired moment.
Okay.
The female wrestler at the Olympics, right? How many people in America, how many millions of people in America saw that clip?
Right.
I can't even pronounce her name.
We neither.
And I don't think girls should be wrestling, but that's beside the point. And said, what would America be like if once a week Michelle Obama got up and said that?
Right. Right.
Or Barack Obama, or Al Sharpton. All it would take is one high-level charismatic person to say that with that kind of enthusiasm and passion, because the clip began with her thanking God.
Right, I know.
Which athletes do routinely. They haven't thanked God in an Oscar ceremony in about 30 years, literally.
Right. Well, they have to thank Satan, though. I have to say, multiple people did. But that was amazing, and we need more of that. But that's why it's still the Black community are the ones that are going to have to break out here, because
that's why they and everyone else needs to read Barack Obama's Promised Land.
Yeah, and that's not it. That's for real.
What's that?
Because you really break it down in that book about the missed opportunity. But obviously now I don't think it was a missed opportunity. I think it was a goal. And these people are Eric Holder, one of the worst egregious ones.
Right.
But again, I do believe, at least on the ground level in New York City, my Black friends, most of them think that critical race theory is ridiculous and they want nothing to do with it.
Right.
They want the cops back.
Right.
And now with this vaccine mandate, a lot of them don't want the vaccine because of the history of experimental treatments in their community.
Or as Joe Biden famously said, because of the Tuskegee Airmen.
So stupid.
You knew the word Tuskegee was in there somewhere.
Oh yeah. Well, if it's not that, then it's Jim Crow.
Right.
When he was the most racist of them all these years. I don't know what's going on. And then we could get into a million other things. But again, you are the most refreshing writer out there. And Barack Obama's promised land, deplorables need not apply, is actually way more. It is very, very funny and witty, but it's also it's a good book also for Black community to read, because it kind of breaks down what really did happen over the
Yeah.
last several years, and the
Right.
missed opportunity that isn't gone forever if we have some people step up and take the reins. Because I saw I saw like the guy you're talking about that thought Guam was going to fall over. You know, they were singing like the whole Black congressional caucus, which should all be investigated. They were like singing like a hymn in front of the White House to because of voting ID and
Yeah.
all of this. These people are not serving anyone, let alone the Black community. And I think it's really time that we start finding and championing and pushing up Black leaders who actually care about God, family, and traditional values, which there's a lot of them. They've just been weeded out over this.
No, they get weeded out early, and that's where voter corruption, voter fraud works. Its most diabolical work is in those initial city elections where a Black reformer steps up,
Right.
and the machine shuts them down.
Right.
And I know several people here in Kansas City who've had that personal experience with vote fraud at that ground level that nobody notices.
Right. And I think, honestly, I think a lot of those people have already because they recruited, it was Obama and Jay-Z and LeBron James that recruited 30,000 Black youth to work at the polls and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't tell them that they would also be maybe liable for voter fraud someday.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we'll see. I just
Hey.
hope that there's some justice, but like you, I believe God's in control and God will win this. But one battle after another, we have to just keep standing up and fighting.
You get up every morning and think about what you're going to do today to win the victory here. So.
I know, and we're one of the best. Everyone should check out your website, cashill.com. I'll put it in the description. And I honestly, not only are you a great reporter, but you're so funny. So no matter how tragic the topic is, you still make me laugh. But every day I look to see if you have a column out somewhere, and we'll have you back when the next next thing happens that's irrational and crazy, and I need your advice.
Okay, yeah, and yesterday, by the way, was allegedly Barack Obama's birthday, but if you read my book, you find out it wasn't his birthday at all. But that's another story for another day.
Oh God, I can't wait to see you again. I think you're the best. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey Mel, thanks for having me. It's your
Thank
joy
you.
and pleasure, and a true warrior.
Okay, see you next time. Keep fighting.